Okay, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on where you are. Today is February 24th, and this is another of our SIG CLI bi-weekly meetings. My name is Matej, and I'll be your host today. Let me quickly share my screen because I just figured out that I haven't done it yet. And let me quickly share the agenda with the rest of the group and the chat. And since I was talking with y'all, I didn't open all the windows. Okay, so the agenda is in the chat. A quick announcement, I have only one. There's a code freeze in less than 2 weeks on March 9th. So if you have anything planned for 121, make sure that is being merged by that date. It is basically less than 2 weeks away from today. Sean, Phil, Eddie, do we have any additional announcements?
Yeah, I just dropped one in from Slack. Xander is saying that there's a feature blog freeze. So if we want to write a blog post for any of the features we have, the due date is March 1st.
Yeah, so if you have any big features that you're working on for 121, make sure to reach out to Xander or any of us that I just called out. Okay, let's see. Do we have any new people on the call? I think we have. Feel free to introduce yourself. Tell us who you are and what you're expecting to get from SIG CLI.
Hey, I'm new here. My name is Josh Kurz. I sent a pull request for a feature for kubectl top, and it was asked that we wanted to do a demo. So I thought I didn't even know that you guys did this, so I thought it was pretty cool. And here I am to do it.
Awesome. Welcome, Josh.
Thanks.
Do we have anyone else that is new to this call?
Okay, I'm not new, but I don't think I've ever introduced myself. I just sort of show up and I'm really quiet. But I'm Sally, and I used to be on Matej's team, but I've recently switched teams. But I'm still very much interested in SIG CLI, so I'm here.
Hey, Sally. Do we have anyone else? I'm scrolling through the participants list, and I think that I more or less am familiar with the rest of the folks. Yeah, okay. And I'm not hearing anyone else screaming out loud. I guess that everyone that wanted to speak up did so. So let's move on to the main topics. And Josh, let me make you a co-host because I'm guessing since you're presenting a demo, you'll be interested in also sharing the video or sharing the screen overall. And let me stop sharing my screen, and you should be able to share your screen now.
All right, cool. So I did a Google search that, and glasses do protect you from COVID. So there's a lot of results for it if you guys are interested. But
deal.
Okay, so pretty much I do a lot of operations work. Kubernetes is the central to that. There's a problem that I commonly face where we'll have nodes that are out of resources, and you run this command, top nodes, to get the nodes that are having problems. You want to see what's out of CPU, what's out of memory, and because a lot of times this is the root cause of many problems. So it's actually really difficult to take this and easily just say which pods are running on those hosts that are taking up all the resources. And so there's some things you can do to get it to work. And I mean, it's possible, but I just wanted to make it really easy to be able to do that. So I wanted to add a feature in, and I think I messed up with some namings and things, but really all I wanted to do was just add a feature that allowed users to top pods and get the node name at the same time. And so that's what the pull request that I referenced in the document is about. And the new feature is this node name flag that you would add to top pods, and it puts in the node name in the column node for you, and that gives you a lot of possibilities to be able to grep for a node that you know has problems. And then you can do all the other things on the command line that you can do, like sort and whatever on CPU and memory and things like that. And that's pretty much it. I just wanted to be able to get this without doing anything special, because the node information when I'm topping pods is very important, in my opinion, and from what I've seen, to be able to isolate pods on a specific node that are taking up all the resources at once. And so that's what the pull request is about. There was some back and forth about the, because I originally had set it up with the title was dash wide option, because in my head, like when you do a get pods dash wide dash o wide, it gives you the node information. And so that's where I was kind of initially thinking about it. But the more we dug into it, it made more sense just to add a specific option for this. And then if we wanted to dig into a new output feature, that might be something that we could talk about potentially afterwards.
I have a question that immediately pops into my head. If I'm not an expert, honestly, I don't know top pods that well. Does top pods allow you to filter by a particular node?
I don't believe so.
Okay, so here's where I have a little bit of confusion with regards to node name. I think that if the flag is called -- node name, a lot of people will confuse that this flag is for not showing the name, but for filtering the node name. And that will be my initial thought. Overall, the feature, I'm on board. I definitely like it. And I'm starting to think, why not just make it by default part of the output? It seems reasonable thing to have there. I know that you can always do describe node and you'll get a list of pods with details, but that is very hard to read, whereas top pods might be a little bit easier. But I would maybe a follow-up. I don't want to build more on that PR. Maybe a follow-up would be to have the ability to filter by a particular node. If you know that you have a particular node, well, you can grab, that's true. That's one of the options. And even just having the node name there is perfectly valid, even by default. I'm not sure how others are looking at it.
Yeah, I think like the feature makes sense. The having it by default, I think like if we were to design this today, then that would probably make sense. Having it, I mean, while we officially do not support people running from like awk script to parse out data from these things, changing that output format would break all those scripts. So if we want to enable it with a flag first, that seems like a very low risk sort of thing to do. And then we can decouple that from the decision of, are we changing the default output? What's the, like, size of the contribution to do this? Is it pretty trivial? Like, the other concerns would be like, this is a lot of code and requires fetching stuff that we don't already fetch or something like that.
Yeah, so the code's pretty simple. There is one extra call that's made if you pass this flag in to get the pods, which could be I guess optimize a little bit more, but yeah. So if you did, I would suggest probably not doing this by default, just because of that, because you're going to add in one extra call. Initially, I wanted to have the API return this data by default when you do the top pods call from the API, but that was like, I was like, okay, this is a little bit more involved than I really wanted to get into right now. So it was just like, let me just make an extra call to the API to get all the pods. But the code is pretty simple, though. I mean, you guys obviously please give your feedback on it, but I don't think it's that complex. There might be, so you guys are probably better at Go than me, so there's probably some things that could be improved for sure.
I'll try have a look at this particular PR later this week. I think the overall agreement is that yes, it should be there without any question. The only question is whether we want to have a new flag or whether the -o white could be retrofitted, because theoretically that's modifying the output, and that's a pattern that we try to stick with across the board. So if you're using get or pretty much any printing command, you are already familiar with that. If you pass -o white, you will get the extended output. So I'm personally leaning towards that one, because like I said initially, the node name, my initial thought would be, this is how I filter and not show node name.
Okay, that makes sense. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Ricardo.
Yeah, I was going to ask, because I did the first review into this PR, and about the node name, it's instead of the internal IP. Actually, I asked that because I guess for most of the users makes more sense the node name and not the internal IP, right? So I was wondering, instead of making this this second call, when you create a pod and this is and it's already scheduled, the controller puts the node name as a specification, I think.
Yeah,
but
it does.
So I don't think you need to make another call and list the pods from the nodes. But on the other hand, I don't know if you insert this like a manifest inside the etc Kubernetes manifests, if this is part of the specification that the API returns also when you do a kubectl top pods. So I would just take a look into that, because probably this might be helpful. This is part of the specification of the pod, I think.
I'm gonna interject there. It sounds like we have consensus on no one is vocally opposed to this feature. We need to figure out some of the small semantics. There's a lot on the agenda. Why don't you all get together, set up a meeting if you need to chat it out around the PR?
Yeah, good point. I'll sync with Ricardo and Josh about the shape and the
Sounds
details. Okay, let's jump to the second, which is Phil with customized plugin for KubeBuilder.
I'll just give a quick summary. I could give a demo, but there's a lot going on, and so I don't want to. I'll do that on the end if there happens to be time. The TLDR is that KubeBuilder uses Customize for generating its configuration. The way that the process is actually a little bit complicated and has grown over time, as it involves generating configuration from Golang code, for instance, for CRDs. It involves generation of certs and wiring those into different places in terms like base 64 encoding stuff, or I believe. And so So it's not really just about taking some static set of YAML and patching or manipulating it. It's actually about generating YAML dynamically based on changing set of code or certs or definitions. So this looks actually like a good candidate for KubeBuilder or for customized plugins. So I wrote a little, I converted essentially all of the KubeBuilder scaffolding for customized into a customized plugin. And so now it goes and generates straight from source as part of the customized pipeline. And I can give a demo at the end if people want and if there's time.
Okay.
Otherwise, it's just a FYI if you're interested in sophisticated cases of using customized plugins or functions. This is, I think, a pretty good case.
Yeah, I'll be interested in seeing demo. Let's jump to Sean and Harsh first, and then if we get the time, we can return. Sean, you want to talk about the kubectl commands and headers?
Sure. So this is mostly just informational, and I put the PR for implementing this in our docs. This code is almost all Phil's. He actually had gone he'd gone down the path quite a ways. So thanks, Phil. So for quarters and releases now, we've said we're going to address this, and we actually have now. We actually got the KEP into the new format and got the production readiness review and got approved for this release. And we have this PR. I'm going to be adding some more tests. It actually, so I've manually verified that this works. And so so if you're interested in this, please comment or reach out to me in person. Just a quick reminder of what this gives us. So this will give us on the API server in the logs, we'll be able to tell which commands are connected with which REST calls. And so we can get usage statistics. But there's some advanced cases that also are going to be possible with this feature, including adding webhooks that will, validating webhooks that can stop particularly dangerous commands by looking at the headers, just amongst others. So please have a look. There's one really interesting little side note I'll add before I give up the floor, which is that this it's implemented as a round tripper, and there was one command in particular that the round tripper collided with, which is kubectl proxy. And so we actually had to disable this particular feature specifically for kubectl proxy, which is really not that big of a deal in my opinion, because kubectl proxy is just firing up. It doesn't touch the API server initially anyway. So that's my couple minutes on the floor. Thanks, and contact me if you have any questions or comments.
Yeah,
Awesome.
this will be great.
Yeah, I'll definitely have a look at it as well. I remember I was interested in when Phil put together the KEP. Harsh, the design for kubectl wait.
Yeah, if you remember last time, like we were waiting for to reach out API machinery, I guess, because they were doing something on this related. I don't remember exactly. So just wanted to check if like which method implementation should we go with.
Okay, I remember that I was part of the discussion, at least from.
I can quickly say the choices about like
Yes, please.
about the design. Yeah. So the thing is, like we can have --4 flag multiple times in the same command, and that would imply that we have and or support in one command itself, where or would be inside the string of the for condition, like I've shown there in the example, and giving another for flag would imply the and condition, like, if that makes sense. But the other choice is that we don't support, or we don't support, yeah, we don't support and we just use multiple for flags to indicate that we're using or, if that makes sense at all.
Okay, so this is basically about the semantic for how to treat for in combination with an and an or, whether
Yeah.
passing multiple for is an and or, and in either approach, how to express the other one.
Yes.
Does anyone have any preference? Because wait is actually, if I remember correctly, one of the alpha commands, or beta at most. So we can do a little bit of experimentation as long as we maintain backwards compatibility. Maybe we could even play with different approaches through providing both alternatives and gather some feedback. And based on that, we can make a decision. I don't know how others feel. Maybe we can have a default and or a default or flag and see which one will be most frequently used, and we can make a decision from there. I'd like to hear what others are thinking as well. Okay, I'm hearing no answers. I'll have a look at it. I'm not sure if I'll be able to do it within the next week or so. I wouldn't rush too much with it. Let's, can you send out an email, or this was emailed already to SIG CLI? Was there an email about it?
Yeah, it was.
Okay.
Yeah. So Antoine had actually suggested the other way around, and I misinterpreted it and came up with this thing. So, but like there are cons and pros for both of them. So I just wanted to discuss it out.
What was the suggestion from Antoine?
So he suggested that we don't support or the one I have right there. So he wants the -4 condition to be multiple times, and that would indicate user having or conditions. And if the user wants the and functionality, he has to use the Unix and himself. But having the whole experience in one command is pretty nice, I feel. And oftentimes, we want stuff like this, like for the same resource, we want the multiple conditions to be checked. So,
Okay, I'll have a look at it sometime later this week. Yeah, go
I
ahead.
have a comment, which is like, even if this command is alpha or beta, it's probably one that's like more designed to be used in scripts than say like top command, which is designed to use by humans. So like breaking, like any backwards compatibility changes in flags and stuff is probably going to break anyone who's using this in that context. So we should maybe go like a little bit extra, like we can change the flag name, make the old flag hidden, right? So people stop using it, mark it deprecated, like do that extra little dance.
Yeah, that's definitely something that I'm leaning forward, is we can experiment with new flags and see where what the response is. I'll try to respond to this sometime next week, and we can figure out where to go from there.
sure.
Okay.
So,
Cool.
Harsh,
neither of
Yeah, go ahead, Eddie.
Sorry, can you just, I put the Google thread for the email. Can you just bump that thread with a summary and the decision that needs to be made and the options, please? I think
Sure.
I think this fell off our radar, so apologies for that.
I'll do that. I'll add it in the description.
Thank
Okay.
you.
So
Thanks a lot.
yeah, neither of the changes actually would be like would make it backward compatible, but putting both of them would actually be tricky, like, because they both are conflicting with each other a lot.
Okay, cool. Okay, last topic, if I'm looking correctly, Phil and Tanya, product management updates.
Yeah. So I think last meeting we talked about, maybe it was in the triage meeting even, we talked about essentially the methodology for accepting features tends to be like we sit in this meeting and then muse and then say, okay, that makes sense maybe. And it would be better if we had something that was like a little more accessible and data driven and consistent, right? And so Tanya and I spent some time chatting, and we're thinking of exploring a program, or what is it called? Basically trying out a program to use some like icon emoji indicator on issues, right? And then when we do like our features or whatever, our bug scrub or feature exploration, like we just filter and then we just communicate to the community like broadly that like, hey, we'll start looking at feature requests around 20 engagements through this emoji or something like that. So like that way we ensure that there's at least 20 individuals who are excited about this, which should be possible given the number of KubeControl users. And yes, there's a lot of ways that could probably be skewed. Like, everyone has 20 friends, right? But I still think that's better than having, no bar for a level of engagement from users and then us just kind of making a judgment call each time. So I need to follow up with Tanya to figure out where we are on that. I think she was going to basically write up a proposal, just like a very light proposal of like, here's what the emoji is, here's how many we want to see, here's what that means. It means we'll consider it, not that it's definitely accepted or something like that. But we'll at least give it like a 15-minute discussion or something.
Do you want to include there? Do you want to include there that if someone is willing to additionally write this, it will get plus 10 extra points?
Right. Yeah. Right. What? Right.
Yeah. Actually, someone will say, "I want to see this being done." It gets the necessary 20 or whatever the magic number will be, and then on top of that, the author or someone else will say, "I will do it."
Yes, that was the second. So there's essentially two gates. I guess gatekeeping is not a popular term, but checks. I don't know. Essentially two checks that are necessary for us to make strong statements about the taking on a feature being a good decision. The first one being that there has to be some amount of desire from the community to have the feature, and the second one being that it's going to have the right level of ownership, right? So maybe like 20 people want a feature, or like 100 people want a feature, but it's like going to require a lot of work and no one's really signed up for it. And so it doesn't really matter because no one's going to do it. So whatever, or versus maybe something where only like the node name, I think is a perfect example where like the bar for that should be relatively low, given that it's not creating a ton of work. There's someone who wants it, so we just need to make sure that like the community, like there's some baseline level of engagement from the community, but not consider staffing as part of that. So yeah, those are I agree with both of those. I think the other stuff, like asking, like we could throw in there like, oh, tests and like this sort of stuff, right? But I think we probably don't want to do that because I think of this as more of just like a filtering mechanism for us to steer conversation. And so we should probably ask for people to do the cap or do the README or do that stuff after after we've given it like a quick review on the feasibility.
Would that also include plugins? Because I remember that we had several conversation in the past where we are lacking basically any acceptance criteria for plugins. So if someone will, turn to us with, oh, this is my plugin, I would really want to see this plugin be part of the main kubectl because it will be valuable as a default. Would that proposal also cover plugins where someone is actually interested in, contributing and owning that one? So
it also has to contain the life cycle, right? Of like, so you want to add a new command, right? Start with a plugin, put it in this particular repo. Here's the directory you put it in. Here's like the process for getting it visible in kubectl as part of help so that people know to install it, right? Yada, yada. Okay, here's how many, create an issue, get this many engagements on it, then we'll upstream it, right? That sort of thing for new commands, and then also for additional flags, right? To existing commands, it becomes, okay, like, is the flag hidden by default or not? Is it, opt-in versus opt-out? The same sort of discussions we always have. We should just codify those and saying, here are the steps. But yes, the answer is yes, we should, as part of that, the process for, or the life cycle of getting it from inception to part of a Kubernetes release should be included.
Yeah, awesome. That sounds great. Thanks a lot, Phil, for starting that work. Does anyone have any questions or suggestions to this effort? Okay,
All right.
Cool. I think we have about 22 minutes, so that's sufficient time for both stand-ups. And since we promised Phil a little bit of time for his demo, Phil,
you didn't promise me anything actually, but there might be time.
Yeah, but I was curious to see the demo myself as well of that. Let me quickly make a co-host and stop sharing the screen. Give it a try.
So we're doing the customized thing?
Yes. Yes, please.
Jeff, is that you?
No.
Oh, are we doing demos or stand-ups? I thought we were doing a demo. I can do the stand-up.
Okay, let's do stand-up.
Are we doing stand-ups or the demo first? Sorry.
Oh, I thought that we were doing the demo, Phil.
Okay.
That's why I called you out.
Okay, I can do that. Well, why don't we do the Jeff? Like the stand-up isn't going to take forever, right?
Okay, let's
no, it'll take about 10 seconds.
Okay, let's just do that.
Okay, so we've been working on getting the version of Customize in kubectl updated for quite some time, and there's a PR out now that does the job. And right now we're working on trimming some dependencies so that we don't minimize. So we can minimize the number of dependencies we introduce into kubectl. But the good news is that a lot of people have been waiting for the ability to crank up the version numbers of other dependencies, things like YAML libraries and whatnot. And the existing version of customizing kubectl was kind of blocking that. So that's all being eliminated now. And I'd really like to get this PR in before the code freeze. So we'll trim out some of the depths as much as we can, and hopefully we'll get that in before everything freezes up.
Awesome.
That's it.
Thanks a lot, Jeff. I know that was a big effort. Yeah, go ahead, Sean.
Sorry to interrupt. So I saw that on the PR there was some talk about removing Starlink dependency.
Yeah, we think we figured out a way to trim that out without breaking it. So I think we can do it.
Hey, Jeff, are we going to have the same issue in 6 months, 12 months when we want to update the version again, or we're good?
No, No, this is a fundamentally different approach.
Nice. Awesome.
Yeah, it's just,
awesome
in
work.
other words, it's, there was over the past year, the switches, past 2 years now, I guess, but the big switch over to Go modules, which are wonderful, eliminated a lot of things, a lot of the hacks that were done to get customized in there in the first place. So now it's just conventional imports.
Also, the dependencies on a specific API have been removed, which actually is good for version skew as well. Is that correct, Jeff?
Yeah. It's all depending on well-semvered, or at least I think they're well-semvered modules at this point.
Does this give us the comment and structure, keeping that stuff, or is that not?
So there's I'm not saying that, so there's cleanup work that can now be done. There's this constructed stuff, there's interfaces that are still existing in Kustomize, which allowed the ability to have, inject either the API machinery dependencies or the KML stuff. There's a lot of, shouldn't say a lot, but there are layers in Kustomize that can now be removed, but the actual deps are gone. So there's an issue in Kustomize to do the cleanup work, but that cleanup work does not block in any way this reintegration. I don't know if I answered your question, but yeah.
Yeah, that answered it 100%.
Two more short ones. So this is a major version change for Kustomize. Does this break anyone's things that they have if they're relying on it right now?
Yes. If you do Control -K, it will be using Kustomize 4. So yes, that could break.
Okay, so we should probably get those documented. And the second thing, which applies to the first thing, is who's going to write the blog post for the feature updates in here? Which is due March 1st by end of day.
I can write a blog post.
If you want to make it a party, you can invite me.
Yeah, I can write the blog post and try to identify what features break. So anybody who's currently using Kustomize, standalone Kustomize, they can switch over to using kubectl Kustomize without any pain because it's the same thing. Modulo the HashiCorp dependencies that we've cut. So that's why there was a major increase. But folks that are still using customizing kubectl currently may find some issues. So they can run a customize fix command to take care of that. That can be in the blog post.
Awesome.
Oh, that's awesome. That command exists?
It does. Whether it fixes everything under the sun, I'm not going to personally guarantee it, but it makes a good attempt to do so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe we can automatically run that. I don't know. It might be too late.
Right. I unfortunately don't have any data as to how many people are using the old version of customizing kubectl because it's well over a year old at this point.
Specifically the old features.
Yeah.
We should make sure that it prints out warnings too if it finds things that are broken, so people that get updated by their package manager just don't have shit randomly stop working.
Maybe even instead of, because I'm not a fan of automatically fix your files, maybe it would be even better to be explicit, because if we are on the fly fixing something for people, it won't be fixed permanently on the disk. So it would be better, like Eddie said, put a warning, put a suggestion how to fix it by running the command. You'll get a permanent fix in place, and then just rerun the command.
So I realize that we're getting close to code freeze, and I definitely don't want this to miss because of this stuff. Jeff, if you scope this out and you put out some calls for help, like I'm happy to jump in and figure out what I can do, and I'm sure other people are as well. So don't feel like we're just throwing this at you last minute here.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
I mean,
So,
the big thing, right, is we need to make sure that we communicate to users that this is switching to customized v4. Here's a link to whatever material we've already produced that talks about the differences between the versions. Do you have anything like that?
Yeah, it's some kind of a FAQ, basically. That's what.
Yeah,
yeah.
That's easily extractable from the existing release notes. So yes.
Yeah, I think that would be sufficient.
That's yeah. And then if we want to go one step further, we can decide to do that when appropriate.
Okay, cool. That was a major undertake. Thanks a lot, Jeff. I know you've spent numerous hours.
Days, weeks.
Yeah, even months, I would say, cranking this up. And
it's a nerdy life.
True. Okay, let's jump to another stand-ups. Ricardo.
Yeah, I'm sorry about putting this at this meeting agenda, but I will not be able to attend the bug screw next one. This is an issue about adding endpoints count in kubectl get services, I guess. And I thought it was going to be an easy one. I think Eddie also thought it was going to be an easy one. But yeah, it happens that the way that API machinery does things, I don't think we can cross between objects. So I would just ask you folks to take a look into this and see if this makes sense. Otherwise, we should probably close this one, because what returns the tables for kubectl, I guess it's the API, right? So yeah, and yeah. And this is inside, like they receive the service object and only the service object, and it doesn't make any reference to the endpoints, and also like now to endpoint slice things. So
it's not that simple. The internal printers that are responsible for producing the tables, which are used for get commands, are in the ownership of this SIG, actually, because we control the table output. So we have the power to change the output.
Is this part of the status on the service object?
It's
no.
part of.
Okay, so then we have
endpoint is not part of the service object, because what creates endpoints, it's the controller, but yeah, it doesn't feel back the service object.
This can't be in Git as written. We'd have to change the service API. It could be in describe potentially.
I would have to look deeply, but I know that in some Get for a particular resource, we are reaching for additional elements, but I'm not 100% sure. I'll dig through the code and I'll leave an answer in that issue, whether it's feasible or we will just we will push it towards describe rather.
I appreciate that, because I spent something like 4 hours trying to figure out what was printing then, and then figure out that was the API and not keeps.
Ricardo, ping me on Slack. I'll point you to where the table printers are, which are responsible for the output. And this is something that others might be interested in. I'll definitely, I can point folks. It's basically package internal printers, something like that.
Yes,
I think Ricardo posted those on the
yes.
issue.
Yeah, those are those printers. Nick, do we have
figure out just doing some grep? Like I will grab some field and see where is it. So
the file itself is still big.
I hope you learned something though. Familiar with the code base.
Nick or Paul, do you have anything from the CUI front? I know that there's been some movement in the moving CUI to Cube 6.
So the status there is that we have some CLA stragglers that we need to figure out. Either we need to drop some commits or we need to put a notice file. So we're trying to figure out which is the best option. I think we have like 2 or 3 stragglers. So we're forcing some that we know, and then the ones we don't know, we need to figure out. So
Okay.
That's, yeah, it's kind of stuff, the long tail. It takes forever to get these little things squared away. I did have a question. This is sort of a generic question, but is there a good way for us to distinguish system namespaces in a kind of provider agnostic way from user namespaces? Is that a knowable distinction?
I don't think there is any.
Dash system.
Great. Yeah, that's pretty good. Pretty good heuristic.
Okay. Kube system and everything else is provider and everything else is user. I think Kube system is the only one that is Kube specific. In
OpenShift has a bunch of dash operators and dash operator managers, manager operators. It has like 50 different namespaces that it creates that don't have system in it, but it has combinations of manager or operator or OpenShift in them. So
OpenShift has OpenShift dash whatever is usually OpenShift reserved. That's true.
Okay.
But it will be, there's no generic mechanism as of yet.
Okay.
It'd be great if there was a label.
Yeah. So in short of that, in the release, we just made release 10.2 and final preparation for this repo transfer that introduces some of these heuristics just to try to do a better distinction. So now if you open up the namespace switching widget, you'll be able to do type add find. You'll be able to see a distinction between our current heuristics for distinctions. And if other providers like Microsoft or Google or AWS want to come to the table and add additional heuristics, we made it a very clear way for adding provider level heuristics.
Cool.
Other than that, I want to see the demo.
Yeah, me too.
So I relinquish my time.
Phil, you have 7 minutes still.
I can do it. All right, you able to see this?
Yep, that's your VS Code.
Great. Okay, so what I got here is there's this new command. I'll roll through some examples first, and then from there you can then I'll show you kind of how it's implemented. So the first example is like doing this as a standalone command. I think there's reasons that this makes sense. That a user might want to do this, right? And so you do something like this, and you can see here the resource file, right? It says KubeBuilder project, and then it has a project directory. So this is where the KubeBuilder code is, and it has an image. And so if I, run this thing, I didn't test this beforehand, by the way, so YOLO. Okay, there we go. So, if I run this thing, it spits out all this stuff, which has, the CRDs and stuff. So this is generated from the code by looking at the types. If I want to do, this is using the function framework as that's part of Customize. I can give it patches. And so then it will apply the patches. So in this case, it's like replicas 5 it's set. And then without the patch, it's replicas 1 here. So that's kind of like the standalone mode. I think it's kind of an interesting pattern for if you have like Istio or something and you want to install. But it also is done as a customize. This is where I think is cool. It shows like the flexibility of this approach. So what I have here is I took, that alpha config gen command, which I just ran, and then I go and install it as a customized plugin. So this is just the standard plugin approach, right? As this little script here. And then I have this customization YAML. So I just give it as a transformer. And this is that same config you saw before. And so if I run customize build on this, you can see that it generates the same thing from the customized piece. And then I have some test data here. I think we'll show you kind of like where this gets interesting is I can do something like say, okay, enable webhooks just as a field instead of commenting out customized stuff, because there's an API, right? And so that will like trigger whether webhooks get generated. There's one here which is where is it? Actually, I may not have an example of it generating a cert, but it will actually generate a cert and wire it in for development for webhooks so that you don't have to like spend so much time doing that, which was kind of a pain.
It can work with component config, right? So component config gets wired in slightly different. So if you give it like the path to a component config file, it will use like that methodology for generating the configuration. And so kind of the nice aspects of using customize is you can use all the other customized stuff. So you can patches and resources and use this as part of faces and do, you know, config map and secret generation, or stitch together a couple, you know, customize files from this. So it works just like any other customized transformer, but is replaces just massive amounts of configuration. Like the alternative to this, for instance, is if you look at like a project here, this is, you can see this directory. Is everyone able to see this directory on the side?
Yeah, we can see it.
So you have like, you know, this is like, instead of just to turn off Prometheus, right? Like, how do I turn on or off Prometheus? I got to go track down like, where is the Prometheus thing, right? So over here, and then like, you know, this is the approach here, right? So I turn off Prometheus here, and then Prometheus someplace else, or I turn off webhooks here, and so you're kind of like searching around for these comments to figure out how to stitch these things together. So it's just it's a way of introducing abstractions to as like kind of a first class notion to customize. And it allows, for KubeBuilder, this is useful because one thing this allows us to do is extend that abstraction. So in this case, if you want to have a specialized KubeBuilder project that generates configuration differently, like for operator SDK, for instance, you just layer in your operator SDK and it will transform the output of KubeBuilder as needed. And so here's like an example of like a framework. And there's kind of two methods we provide, and they can be used together or independently. The first is sort of like allowing you to codify, customize patch, like what you do with customized patches and stuff, as kind of these templatized patches, right? So in this case, this is the whole extension that does the replicas patch. And so what it does, it says, okay, I want a new template command. Here's the API. API structure has this replicas up here. Here's some patch templates. There's a list of them. And so it says, okay, here's like the patch that you generate, and then you apply it to a deployment named controller manager, right? So this is essentially generating a customized patch programmatically. You can generate resources using templates as well. The other way of doing this is like a more sophisticated approach. This is like the more KYAML, where maybe you don't want to patch for whatever reason. You want to manipulate files directly. You want to inject certain things. And so this is an extension that does the same thing, but is written differently, where it's this template command, it gets a resource list, and then it selects, gets matches of the deployment controller manager manually using this selector approach here, and then it iterates over all the matches and then says, okay, look up the spec replicas field and then set its value to the one provided. So those are kind of the extensions. The actual command itself, which is much more sophisticated, I'll show you a couple examples of different pieces. So here's a controller gen filter. These are all done as filters under the covers. So if you're familiar with that approach, where this framework takes different filters and then, you know, patches, directories of patches and directories of resources. And so you can say, okay, apply these filters. So controller gen filter and assert filter. The controller gen filter is going to invoke the KubeBuilder controller gen object, which reads the source code and generates configuration. And so you can see, like, this is all just configuring that. And then we read the output of the thing, that the CRD generator from code, and then append those resources to the inputs just using a filter mechanism. The cert generation filter generates a certificate using CFSSL, and then injects it in the right places. So it like gets and finds matches for validating and mutating webhooks, for instance. So it generates a cert, finds different webhook configurations, looks for the web field, and then goes and creates like the CA bundle, for instance, or wires in the service, and same the custom resource definition for conversion webhooks. It does something similar here. So it's able to like manipulate those resources. This is that more sophisticated approach of like setting the different fields that it's observing. Then there's simpler ones, which is like, so that's like at the far end of, more complicated. And then on the side of the simpler, right, you can actually just create these directories of templates. This looks, this introduces the capabilities of like Helm charts to some extent, right? Like the methodology that, the Helm charts would use, it kind of allows you to write them in a similar way. And so you can say, for instance, if this particular thing is enabled, this is derived from the API type. So this is a function on the API. If the API says controller manager is enabled, then go generate this resource, and then add it to the set. And so in this case, the pattern is just create a bunch of files, and then check on the API if those particular resources are enabled, and generate them. Patches are similar. You can generate patches the same way. And then if you look back at the command, the way these are wired in is you just say, okay, take all the templates from this directory, take the patches from these directories. Patches is a little more tricky because they have selectors, right? So you only patch certain resources. So those a little more complicated than just directory. And then you can do post-process filters. So in this case, we, for instance, sort the resources, and do that sort of stuff. And then the templates are actually packaged up with the command using packager. So this means while they're defined as file templates down here, they're compiled into the binary with go generate. And so this command is the command that can be run either. What the framework does is it enables you to run it either as a plugin approach, right? It'll accept that input, it will look for it, or as a a function. It accepts both the customized plugin input or the other newer style with the resource list, or it can also be run as a standalone, and this framework basically dynamically filters off of that, and it allows you to do pretty sophisticated stuff within the templates themselves, because you're defining these structs as basically API types, right? And so you can, this function, right, allows you to check whether components are enabled and invoke it from the Go template. The Go template, by the way, is not a fixed requirement. It's just a simple way of writing resources. It's not the customize itself cares nothing about Go templates. It doesn't know they exist at all. It's just a way that the framework enables users to create resource configuration as one of its options. So that, any questions?
I just want to comment that I've been working on iteration on the framework since we just saw some of the code there. I have an open PR on Customize. It's in draft. I'm probably going to turn it into a real PR today that takes some of those interfaces that Phil was just showing and makes them even more powerful by doing things like decoupling the Cobra aspects from the not Cobra aspects, centering it even more on filters and making it multi-version API compatible. So if you're interested in the framework itself, maybe have a look at that.
Yeah, Katrina is cleaning up my crappy code. So thanks, Katrina.
Okay.
Sounds great, Katrina.
Yeah, that looks interesting. Thank you very much, all. We're 5 minutes over top of the hour, so sorry for that. But thank you very much, all. It was nice talking to you as usual, and see you next week for the blocker box scrub, if I remember correctly. Bye, all.